Get ready for another microdose. And hey, if this information is jiving with you, then check out the full episode. The link is in the show notes. Enjoy the ride.
Well, it's funny, as I was making the poster for this show, right? And I haven't been familiar with this term Ikigai until I heard it multiple times in The Gift of Diversity with Marcus Aurelius Anderson, who was on the show this season. And I was like, Ikigai, it was awesome to see that come up. As I'm like searching, I use Canva, create posters and stuff like that. And, I searched like purpose just to see what images would come up. And then sure, Ikigai was kind of everywhere. And I was like, oh, good. I'm glad they brought that up because that was something that really, boom, it's a great concept. And, and Marcus breaks it down brilliantly in this book. And, and then I really actually went and looked in like, what is a Venn diagram? Cause I know what it is, but then I want to know what it was, so I can speak to it very clearly. So there's 4 circles in this Venn diagram of Ikigai. And there's like the 4 circles are the fields, right? That you begin to explore. And then those circles begin to overlap in 2 other ways. So we'll talk about all of that, the big circles, the overlapping, and then the center and what it all means. So the 4 circles are, if you really want to start to discover, like, hey, what is my purpose? Like you might have an idea what it is, but this will help me maybe clarify it a little bit more. And it's good to write things down. It's not something, I don't think that, would help me continually become more purposeful with my time and my life and my intention, I think is a really key word here when you come to purpose, like being intentional. And as I was studying for the show, it's like that started showing up a lot of different synonyms for purpose is intention, right? It's in the definition of purpose is intention. So being intentional and taking time and actually, and just maybe creating this little Venn diagram for yourself can really help you define what this purpose is. So 4 circles to start. It's like, number 1 is what you love, what the world needs. Number 3, what you can get paid for. And number 4 is what you are good at. So that's the 4 areas that you want to explore and really begin to contemplate, sit down, write, and really go deep into them and really be honest with yourself about all that. And then you want to go into the intersection parts, John?
Yeah.
Unions, they call them, according to Venn diagrams, like what they're called unions when the circles begin to merge in these 4 quadrants.
Right. I mean, I'm going to nerd out here because I'm a math major in operations research, master's. Yeah. So Venn diagrams, I lived in the unions and the intersections. So, and I love this image, right? I've seen this 1,000 times and it's very powerful.
I'll actually bring it up on the
those
screen.
Those 4 circles. But you've got, again, what you love, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, and what you're good at. And the intersections or the unions of those 2. So it's just exactly, if you're watching now, you can see what Will's holding up. I should have brought up a shared screen image, but you can see the intersections, again, the unions. And that's where not all of them overlap, but there is some overlap between some of the circles in the Venn diagram. So the unions are passion, mission, vocation, and profession. And those are great. Those are definitely important to have. But then when they all overlap, all 4 of those in the center, again, where what you love overlaps with what the world needs, and it overlaps with what you can get paid for, and it overlaps with what you're good at, that can be your purpose. Although I will argue with that Venn diagram too, in that, hey, we don't get paid for this podcast yet.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't get paid for this podcast, but I feel this podcast is a big piece of our purpose. And it's definitely a, part of the passion, the mission, the vocation, and the profession, but we're not getting paid. So that piece of that Venn diagram is still missing. So maybe we can figure that out. Or maybe if you're listening, you can help us figure this out.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
That's true. We get paid in different ways.
In other ways. But it's also, I think it's like, and that's a good point, John, about when I read about getting paid, it's like, it's how about being paid in, appreciation. Right. Or paid in, that doesn't necessarily keep the lights on. But, one thing that actually Marcus Aurelius Anderson talks about in his book as well is the 80-20 principle. Yeah. So creating, this is kind of the way I've been living for quite a while. It's like, so I've taken all this yoga experience and meditation, all like the reputation I developed here in the city. And, that is about 20% of my time. that's all, to keep a roof over my head, which I'm very fortunate. It's only like, 10, 15 hours a week or something like that, just to keep a roof over my head, which is great. But the other 80% of my time, right, is this. It's writing, it's researching, it's working on our book or working on ways to bring more mindfulness to more people. So it really gives me an opportunity to explore this passion, explore more of this purpose and dive in deeper. And I was experiencing this when I started to act. Like I had a full-time job, which that consumed a lot of my time. And then I got another part-time job just to kind of work, find a new skill as a waiter, because I knew I'd be waiting tables when I first got here in New York. But also that gave me an opportunity to put a bunch of money away too.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to New York, June 3rd, 2003, it'll be 20 years this June 3rd, John. I'm going to have a celebration. And I was able to take that money that I saved up. I was very fortunate to find a place. We'll talk about these synchronicities in a moment, but I found a very inexpensive apartment, and it was nice. Things started to fall into place, and I was able to not work all the time and instead take like at least half my time or more to plug myself into the acting world here in New York. So yeah, I think that's, yeah, go ahead.
I think, you've touched on an important point here, kind of indirectly, but I definitely think you've mentioned it, and I kind of indirectly mentioned it too, is part of your finding your purpose. We've done an episode on, the growth mindset or the beginner's mindset versus the fixed mindset. And, the growth mindset, a way to foster that growth mindset, that's to be vulnerable and to be open, but also to experiment and to explore. And you touched on exploring. And so we've kind of explored, you've been an actor, you were in pharmaceuticals, you've waited tables. I mean, I think that's kind of a rite of passage for everyone going to New York City is to have to wait tables. I've waited tables, but never in New York City. So I can only imagine how stressful that is. Definitely need mindfulness.
Tough skin, people skills, charm, right?
Goodness.
You have to develop all those wonderful skills.
Right.
But go ahead.
Yeah. But, you got to try out those new experiences, whether that's a new profession, whether it's a new hobby, a new activity, maybe a new volunteering opportunity, and really engage in those experiences that can help you to better understand what you're passionate about. And then, where you may be able to get paid and what people need. And it's the Venn diagram, but you have to explore and you have to be willing to maybe even fail and fall on your face and realize, hey, you know what? I'm not good at this, because that was another part of the Venn diagram. I'm not good at this, right? I'm not going to be an Olympic or an X Games athlete. I just don't have that coordination. I know that about myself because I've explored and I've experimented with, some of the sports that are out there, and I'm just not good. So I know that I'm not going to be that. That's not going to be my purpose in life. Yeah. So you have to realize that you need to explore, but also realize that you're going to have failures, going to have setbacks. Maybe in addition to that, when you are experimenting, and we've talked about this before on the show, is journal, that self-reflection. How does that make you feel? How does that particular profession, activity, volunteering, whatever, how does that make you feel? Like journaling about that and then going back and looking at it after a few weeks. I wouldn't have gotten into teaching mindfulness if I wasn't journaling. If I wasn't journaling about how great I felt, one, when I was practicing mindfulness, and two, when I was teaching it. I mean, that felt very rewarding to me. And I felt kind of the intersection of those circles in that Venn diagram. So I think that's a couple of important things there too in exploring and finding your purpose is, one, be willing to explore, two, be willing to fail, and three, journal or do that deep self introspection.
Yeah. And keep going. Don't let the results scare you.
Hey, thanks for joining us on this journey. Small doses lead to big changes. If you're vibing with this snippet, then take a listen to the full episode by clicking the link in the show notes. If you would like to plug in deeper to what we're doing, head to mentalkingmindfulness.com or text MTM to 33777. Until next time, peace.